Hi, welcome to Senior Moments Successful Aging. My name is Mary Beals-Luedtka and I'm your host. I'm the Area Agency on Aging NACOG Director for Northern Arizona. You can reach us toll-free if you have any questions about aging or long-term supports and services. Toll-free again at 877-521-3500. Senior Moments Successful Aging is co-sponsored with Yavapai College, Division of Lifelong Learning. Our producer is Nancy Bennett. Nancy puts the show together and does all that behind scenes, and then I just come in and talk at you. So thank you, Nancy, for everything you do to make this show possible. You can reach Nancy at 928-717-7607. Maybe you have ideas about some shows you'd like to hear about in the future or questions about today's show. So let's get started. We have a very special guest here today, Lucy Hanson. Welcome, Lucy.
Thank you.
Very nice to meet you. So Lucy, you have a very, very special background that I want to talk about today. You were born in the Netherlands. And when you were 10 years old, something happened. So what happened to you when you were 10 in the Netherlands?
Well, lots of things happened. Of course, I heard my parents talk about what was happening in the world. In those days, we didn't have television, so everything we heard was on the radio, and people talked a lot. They still got together and talk a lot. And we heard about these stories about this man in Germany, Hitler. And I didn't know who Hitler was, but I understood that he was trying to get the country up to speed again, and he was building a lot of factories and was making airplanes and tanks and cars. And people kind of looked at each other and they thought, this is not very good, because Germany was not supposed to rearm after World War I, which they lost.
Yeah.
So if we heard it, and the whole world must have heard it, but not much happened. Till in September of '39, he invaded Poland. And I didn't even know what the word invaded meant, but it was that a whole group of soldiers came in the country and took over. So my parents were talking and they said, this is not going to happen to our country because, we are good friends with the German people and we were neutral during World War I, so nothing's going to happen to us. Well, we changed our mind on May 10th, 1940, when Hitler invaded my country, to our biggest surprise, of course. And
how did you know they invaded?
Well, but that's a very good question. Our whole house was shaking. This is 4 o'clock in the morning. And the house is shaking and the windows are rattling. We slept upstairs and we thought it was a big thunderstorm. So we go to the windows, my sister and I, and everything was going like this. We had our heads on the glass of the windows. My mother came running upstairs and said, "Get away from the windows, it is war." Well, I'm 10 years old. We have no television in those days. What is war? Well, war is when you fight each other, but your whole house has to shake.
Wow.
Well, what was happening, this is the first war that they used a lot of airplanes. And they were bombing Schiphol, which is the airport in Amsterdam. And we were only about maybe 15, 17 miles away. So the bombs were exploding and it was so fierce that our house 17 miles away was just shaking. Yeah, it was very scary.
I bet you were terrified.
Oh, we were scared. Well, we really didn't know what war was.
No.
If you ask a 10-year-old now, what is war? They say, rockets flying over and bombs falling. Well, that hadn't happened in the world before.
I try to put it in the context. My granddaughter is 10. Think about her in that situation. I can't even imagine. So how old were your other brothers and sisters?
My sister was 7.
Little.
And then I had a little sister who was 4. But she doesn't remember much about it. Unfortunately, my other sister died during the war because we had no medical help.
So how long were you under occupation there?
5 years.
5 years can be a long time.
From 10 to 15. And you know, lots of things happen in that time.
Yes.
Thank goodness after the first shock, life became a little normal again. We went back to school and, you know, and there are big announcements every time the Germans wanted us to do something different. Like the very first announcement was maybe 3 months afterwards, that there was a big announcement. Everybody who owns a radio has to bring it to a certain school or a certain building in the middle of town. Well, why was that, you think?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they didn't want us to be informed what was happening in the world. And in Holland, it is so small, you know, it's very close to Italy and France and England, really. They didn't want us to know, because in England they were still free.
Mm-hmm.
And they could tell us what was really happening in the world, but we were not supposed to know this. So keep the people innocent.
Keep them sequestered. So did you all turn your radios in?
Not everybody.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. I probably wouldn't.
No, of course
I'm
not.
too much of a rebel.
But it was very dangerous because if they found out, then they would come into your house, take it away, of course, and Dad went to a camp.
So did a lot of people that you know were taken away?
Well, I knew people, you know, I was only 10 years old.
Yeah.
So, but I remember across the street, the people had their radio and it was in a closet, kind of hidden in a closet. And then at 8 o'clock at night, there was a broadcast from England to the Netherlands because our government had fled to England to be free. See, there was another reason that our queen, we had a queen, we still have a queen and a king. If they had stayed in the Netherlands, they would have been, you know, locked up by the Germans. But we have other, how would I say that now? We had
other government officials?
No, we had colonies.
Oh,
like, for instance, we had the Dutch East Indies, we had the Dutch West Indies. And if Hitler had control over those, that would have been a disaster. Mm-hmm. Like the Dutch East Indies are Indonesia now.
Okay.
And there was a lot of oil, and there was a lot of coffee and tea and sugar. And we didn't want... You know, the government was thinking, they had kind of a little inkling what could happen in the future. Mm-hmm. So that's what they did.
So they were ready to go. But, you know, as a young girl, I mean, like you said, those are really formative years between 10 and 15. You know, how do you think that affected you in your life moving forward to be living under occupation in your preteens?
The most important thing I learned from the war is that freedom is the most important thing in your life. Because we lost our freedoms. We were told what to do. We were told what to buy. We were told what we could not do. Like, for instance, I told you about the radios. Well, there were many, many more things that happening. Like, for instance, maybe not even a year later, Hitler didn't like the Jewish people.
No.
So there was a big announcement. All the Jewish children couldn't go to school anymore. No, they couldn't. They couldn't go to the swimming pool anymore. They couldn't go to the park. They couldn't play, well, they could play outside, but, and then they had to wear this big yellow star, and it said Jew on there. And, you know, as a child, you think, well, those people are just like we are. What's happening? Mm-hmm. But it was just those ideas that Hitler had, you know.
Did you have any good friends that were Jewish children that affected? Okay.
No, and there was only one. We knew one young man who disappeared. We don't know where he went. But you know that if I had been a Jewish person, I would say, my goodness, I have to do something about this.
Yeah.
And I just finished reading a book about Jewish children surviving World War II. And it's not only in the Netherlands, it's in Poland, it is in France, it is in all these occupied countries. And how they were hidden with other families, and they didn't see their parents for years.
To keep them safe.
See, well, that is freedom. See, you cannot live with your own family. Why not?
Why not? And how did you feel? Did you feel as a 10 or 11-year-old that you didn't have the freedom to play like you wanted to or say what you wanted to?
Oh yeah, well first it was the radios, and then we had to bring out all the brass and copper articles we had in our house. Because he needed material to make more bombs and ammunition and so we had, because my dad worked with brass and made beautiful objects out of brass. Well, we didn't bring those, we just brought a few. So then, it got worse and worse. Then a few months later, we had silver I forgot my bracelet.
Oh, I remember, yes.
Oh, I forgot my bracelet. Well, we had real silver money. Mm-hmm. Little silver dimes and quarters, real silver in those days, you know. Now it is just make-believe. We had to bring those to the bank. Well, my grandfather said, for my dead body, do I give them my good silver money, and then you get paper money back, or zinc money, or, you know. So he had, I'm so sorry I brought my bracelet. But
well, describe your bracelet.
I show it around town a lot because I wear it a lot, but I've got this point.
It's made of silver dimes, is it not?
Silver dimes, and it is just a band of little silver dimes.
Yes, I remember. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, well, then after that, it was, you cannot have this, you cannot have that. Now, the worst thing was, maybe after 2.5 years, Hitler needed people to work in his factories because the German people were all in the army or the Air Force. Mm-hmm. They were fighting for... So everybody, all men between 18 and 40 had to go to town hall and they were sent to Germany to work in the factories. Well, of course, who was going to work, make bombs and you know, things for the Germans and then shoot back at you?
Yeah. Yeah.
So lots of those people disappeared. They went all underground. My dad didn't go. We had a 2-story house and a little attic on the top with a loose kind of a ladder that you hook up, and then there was just a little attic. And the chimney was right in the middle, so behind the chimney there was an area where he could go. If you heard that there was a razzia, that was an attack on the local men, then he crawled upstairs. And then we took the ladder away and we hang it on a certain hook. So and the Germans would come in your house and look.
Oh, did you heart pound?
Oh, and then my mother had told us, now if they ask, where is your father, you say, in Germany.
Mm-hmm. In Germany?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he's already gone.
Yeah.
How scary for you.
See what freedom is?
Yes.
You are afraid?
You know, especially for your father. I mean, he's your protector and the person that you want to have.
The fear.
I can't even imagine that kind of fear. I can't even imagine. So when you were educated in those first 5 years, was school the same? I mean, how did they change it when you started? They took over, school's going on. How is it different now when you go to school?
We just went to school. Mm-hmm. I forgot to tell you that there were no cars, there were no buses, mm-hmm. There were very few trains. We still had our bikes. You know, in Holland everybody has a bike. But over the years, the tires went all bad, so we had our bicycles just on the rims.
Oh my gosh.
And But we walked everywhere. So I remember walking to school, and it was at least 1.5 miles or 2 miles. And we didn't go to school every day.
So
we
that was
went
the
to
difference.
school only 1 day a week. I tell you why, because Hitler had taken everything away from us, our coal, our gas, so we had no electricity, we had no gas. So how did you keep the school warm? And especially the last winter, the winter of 44, before we were liberated, was the most horrendous winter I lived in my life. Because, like I said, we had no gas, we had no electricity, water only an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon. You do not realize, how do you get gas and electricity? There have to be factories who make this stuff.
Yeah.
And in those days, it was all made with coal. We had a few coal mines in the south of our country, but we didn't get it. He took it to Germany. So the schools were cold.
Yeah.
So we had our layers of. And then don't forget, your feet grow between 10 and 15.
Yes. Along with other
So
things.
by 14 years old,
Oh.
I had no shoes. Of course not. They were all worn out. Clothes were worn out too.
I can't even imagine. So you had to walk to school barefoot.
No.
Okay.
We always, you become very, very self-sufficient.
Resourceful.
You can do with so little. And I think about this now many, many times. There is such there is so much in America.
Yeah.
And in the olden days, you got a new sole under your shoe. There were shoemakers, and they fixed the soles if you had a hole in your sole. Now, you throw them away, and you buy new. And I'm still so very frugal now. I don't have my shoes repaired, of course. But you become very resourceful. I walked the last few months of the war on wooden shoes. There are lots of wooden shoes in Holland, and if you could buy some, that would be wonderful. But we had little wooden platforms in the shape of the bottom of your, and then from old belts from my dad, my mom would take a little strip like this wide with little nails. I can just see her sitting there with her little hammer and that's how we clunked to school.
I like that. And we clunked to school.
Yeah.
So did you get to learn anything at school?
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
you did. Okay.
But we had no paper. We had very little pieces of pencils. So I wrote on slates. We did our homework on a slate.
Like a blackboard?
Yeah, I
Okay.
do still tours at Charlotte Hall Museum, and I take the children into the old schoolhouse, and we have a slate there with slate pencils, and I tell them that's how I did my homework.
Now they don't even use paper. They do
No.
so much electronically, and you lose that. I don't know. There's some, I know you do a lot of work with school children, and talking to them. And, you and I have spoken before about we can't forget this time and what it meant to the women and children.
When I tell them that there are no ballpoints, I said no. When after the war, when I had, for instance, my 18th birthday, I got a fountain pen. Oh, I was so rich. I had a fountain pen. Nowadays, kids don't even know what the fountain pen is.
No, they don't. So how did you make your way to America? What happened after the war?
Well, it took a long time to recuperate.
I bet it
Like
did.
I say, the last winter was the worst because there was nothing in the stores. No food, no clothes, no nothing. Shampoo? We had no shampoo. So we learned to do with nothing. And so after the war, it took a long time to become normal again. And that was 45 was the year I graduated from high school. And over there, you learn a lot. I compare it sometimes with America, and I think, I learned that in high school. Here you have to go to college to learn that.
Yeah, we are behind.
Besides, this is beside the point, the children in America go to school for 180 days a year. In Europe, it's 220. That's 40 days more.
More, yes.
So we even the last winter, I did my homework with a little candle on a slate. But we learned a lot. We learned an awful lot. But after you asked me about how did I come to America, that wasn't, I could come another time and talk about that.
Oh, well, we don't have to go into it too much, but you did end up here.
Yes, I
You know, and it did take you a long time.
to America in 1963.
Okay. So you've been here, and you are an American citizen, and you worked hard for that.
Yes, of course.
Yes. So back to after you recovered, was some of that recover also from nutrition deficiencies, the lack of food? How was the food situation?
Well, after, of course, we had
Rations.
little coupons. I remember that very much. But we had those ration coupons, but there was nothing in the store.
Oh, so you had a ration, and you go to the store, and there was nothing there anyway.
No, there was
So then,
nothing.
what do you eat?
So, well, my mother was, mothers are wonderful. Mothers are so strong, you have no idea. She and a neighbor lady went on her bicycle without the rims about 50 miles to the eastern part of Holland where all the farmers were living. And they were still growing things, although they had to give, I think, half of what they grew went to Germany. So there was still a little food there. But she would take her silver subject because money couldn't buy any. It was just paper. Money had no value. So she bartered her nice things like a nice tablecloth or her silverware. Went to the farmers, slept in the hay lofts on the way because there are no hotels, no motels, no nothing. So she would knock on a farmer's door, and she was not the only one. Hundreds of people did this, and bartered for a little sack of oats or grain or whatever. Well, what do you do?
Yeah.
So she came home. We were always so glad when she came home safely again. We had one of those old coffee grinders, and if you the whole grain is a hard kernel. So I was sitting there for hours grinding. And then she would mix this with a little water, and then the only thing that was heat was we had a big potbelly stove in the middle of the living room, and that's where she cooked. And that's where we kept warm. So she had a big iron cast skillet, and she would make little pancakes and kind of put them on there, and that's what we ate.
That's how you ate.
No syrup, no brown sugar, no butter, no nothing, but we had sugar beets.
So sorry. So as we move forward and think about what's going on with children and mothers and families now, it makes us kind of come to home about what you went through and how it's made you a different person moving forward. So what are some of the, because I do want to have you come back and talk about how you became a citizen, because I think it's important for folks to know what you went through, and I would like that to be another conversation.
I just didn't come.
Yeah, again, so we will have you back again.
Good.
So, but what are some of the greater life lessons that you feel like you are giving us from what you went through in that war? To tell the children, to tell us.
You learn compassion. You learn to help each other. like the Jewish people, they knew that when they were called to the school, that they supposedly were going to a camp. They were going to Germany, to a death camp. So lots of these people asked us, the Dutch people, or they were all Dutch people, of course, their neighbors, could you help me? Do you know a place where I can hide? You know? And then you had to be very careful hiding those people too, because there are always people who collaborate with the enemy.
Yeah, because they're afraid if they don't.
And they think they will get better after going with the occupier. Then you get special things, or you get a little more extra food. So you learn to be self-sufficient and help people, but on the other side, be very careful.
Protect yourself.
Yes.
You know, and your family.
Very.
And your father. Mm-hmm. So you hid him for 5 years?
No, it was maybe 2.5.
But still, that seems like a long time to me.
Forever.
So I imagine you get quite the reaction from the school children that you work with.
They sit there mesmerized. They are 8th graders that I talked my story to. And you know how it is when they come in and they have to go this and they have to go, you know how they are. But the minute I start talking and I have no PowerPoint, so they have to concentrate on what I say, they are just sitting there like, and then you should see all the thank you notes I get later on.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know.
Thank you for telling us, but because this is not in our history books. And you know, it's only 70 years ago. They have to learn about 2,000 years ago, but they don't know what happened 70 years ago in their history books.
And thank goodness people like you are keeping it alive for us.
I
so
feel
that we
it's
know.
An obligation.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're one of the most positive persons I've ever met. To go through what you've gone through. And I really would like to have you back so we can talk some more. I would really appreciate that. And I thank you very much for being here today and starting this conversation. Thanks, Lucy. And thank you for sharing all these stories with us. And we will have more to come because, you know, it's a journey becoming a citizen, especially back then. So thank you again for joining us here on Senior Moments Successful Aging. And Lucy Hansen for joining us. I'm Mary Beals-Luedtka. Until next time.